Hello everyone, and thank you for watching. As no diehards, make it a point to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you do not miss it on anything. As no diehards has to bring to you, as long as it is sports and as long as it is Arsenal related, this is the definite place that you definitely need to be. You already know that we are in the transfer season. It's not yet, but we are definitely heading there. The January transfer window is knocking and a lot is being said. There's a lot of rumor and also done deals are on the way, and I can confirm to you that everything is gonna be all right. Everything is gonna be okay for the club Arsenal. As you already know that Arsenal is in the first position right about now with 37 points, and Manchester City is in the second position with 32 points, and there is a gap of 5 points, and that leaves Manchester City a little bit down. But Manchester City is down, then Manchester United is way down, Chelsea way down. But when we talk about the gap in between there, between Manchester City and Arsenal, that needs to be covered by Manchester City. Arsenal is not willing to let go. Arsenal is not willing to make sure. Actually, what Arsenal is trying to do, it wants to make sure it increases the difference, the gap. It wants to make the gap even much bigger. Wants to widen the gap. So. Anyway, this is going to be a little bit hard by the mere fact that Arsenal has lost one of their football players who has an injury. He's got an injury and he was ruled out for at least 3 months. And guess whom we are talking about? We are talking about the one and only Gabriel Jesus. Gabriel Jesus, who was formerly a Manchester City football player, and he played quite well at Manchester City. And the technical director of Arsenal, Mr. Edu Gaspar, and also the manager of Arsenal, Mr. Mykhailo Arteta, saw this gentleman and they were like, he definitely needs to be at the club. And guess what happened? They decided to go for him, and they made a few signings, including Alexander Zinchenko, and both the two, Alexander Zinchenko and Gabriel Jesus, were from Manchester City. So they shopped from Manchester City, and now they are competing against Manchester City. Manchester City being in the second position and Arsenal being in the first position. That definitely says a lot. It speaks a lot. That means this January transfer gives Arsenal a big chance to make sure it can sign good players so that possibly it can compete favorably, because five gap difference for Arsenal, for Manchester City, 5 points is not a big deal, to be honest with you. 5 points is not a big deal. If Arsenal definitely want to take this English Premier League, that definitely means that they will have to do quite a lot. The January transfer window is something they should use as a tool. So anyway, I'm with a friend, but I will ask him a few questions, and possibly he will be letting us know. He's one of the best sports analysts I've ever seen, and right about now I want to ask him a few questions, and he understands quite a lot about sports. And I would like to know, mainly I would like to know what you think about the difference between Manchester City and Arsenal, and that 5 gap difference. Do you think Arsenal is going to take the English Premier League? Will it manage to take the English Premier League, or it will be a bit hard? If not, what should Arsenal do? The general transfer window. There are a few players that have been linked to Arsenal. A few players have been linked to Arsenal. One of them being Cody Gakpo, and also Joao Felix has also been linked, and also Shakhtar Donetsk football player, the Ukrainian international Mykhailo Mudryk has also been linked. Both of them are sort of strikers. What do you think about this general transfer, and what do you think about Arsenal and its possibilities of winning the Premier League?
In terms of Arsenal winning the Premier League, I think up until now it's still early on. We're in the tail end of December, and obviously Arsenal's players are coming back from the World Cup. But I still believe Man City are the favourites. They've got the wider squad, they've got the experience, they've been there numerous times over the past few years, and personally, I believe they're the best closers in Europe. They can easily go on a 10, 12, 13 game win streak, and I just don't personally think Arsenal will be able to keep up with them as the season progresses. In terms of Arsenal's squad depth, they've got a relatively good starting 11, but it just takes one or two injuries to completely derail their season. And with that many games being cramped in, the World Cup, cup ties and whatnot, I just think injuries are bound to happen. It's a part of football, and Arsenal just need to try and bring one or two players in January, even though historically January signings aren't usually a success, but Arsenal have had success in the January transfer window in the past, especially with the likes of Aubameyang, and they signed Lacazette, even though Lacazette's career didn't pan out as was expected. But I just think they need to get in maybe a backup striker, and most definitely just another holding midfielder in case anything was to happen to Thomas Partey.
Okay, so you definitely, what you've said is, I agree to quite of some of the things you said. But again, it will be remembered that nobody saw this coming. Nobody saw the 0.5 difference between Arsenal. When the season was starting, did you see the 5-point difference coming between Arsenal and Manchester City? And another thing that possibly you could talk about is, do you think maybe Mykhailo Arteta is copying Pep Guardiola's tactics because they have trained together? They have played quite a big part in football together. So do you think he is copying some of his tactics and employing them at Arsenal?
I think no one would have expected Arsenal to be in the position they're currently in. And they've started the season extremely well, especially with being 5 points clear at this stage. But it's still early on. And honestly, I believe let it get to about 25 games into this season, and if Arsenal is still there and thereabouts, and they've still got this gap, then we can talk about it then. But it's still early doors. However, I just think Man City will pip them to the title in the end. But Arsenal finishing in the top four and obviously being title contenders is, a huge step for them, seeing as they missed out on top four in the previous 2 years. And I just think Man City are still the favourites, as ludicrous as that sounds. With them being 5 points behind, I still think they're the favourites at this moment in time, just due to the squad depth and the amount of world-class players they have in that team, and just their experience and know-how. That goes a long way in a 38 games, league title. And in terms of Pep Guardiola and Mykhailo Arteta, playing the same style of football, I think their styles are relatively similar, but that's just a thought process that they've had in Spain for a long time, passing it out from the back and, trying to keep as much possession as they possibly can. That's the way they play in Spain. That's Spain's identity, and they've obviously both come from that same school of thought. But even if he was to say he's tried to copy Pep Guardiola, he's arguably the greatest manager we've ever seen in football, so there wouldn't be anything wrong with taking a point or two from a man like that, who's won, countless trophies in his time as a manager. And obviously Pep Guardiola is a serial winner. He's won countless trophies as both a player and manager, so he's got almost an obsession with the game, and his teams play a certain style of football, which has obviously been a proven style to win. And he's improved countless players. A lot of people will turn around and say obviously he's had the best players in the world, and could he do this at a team where he had less money and whatnot. But that's, every manager relies on his players. You can't tell me one manager that's been successful that's walked out with a team that's bang average. It's not something that happens. To win at the highest level, you have to have some of the best players in the world, and you can't tell me every single player that's played under Pep Guardiola hasn't benefited from, his management style or his mentorship. We can look at someone like a Raheem Sterling who came from Liverpool, who had obviously problems finishing, even though he's not the best of finishers at this moment in time. He's, improved so much as a player. You can look at someone like even, a Rodri coming in from a Diego Simeone team where he was asked to, sit back, defend, break up play and then try and move from there. Now he's one of the most, comfortable on the ball defensive midfielders you'll see in world football. And obviously he's still breaking up play at times. He's helping out the centre backs. He's been asked to almost defend at the halfway line where he's a lot more exposed, but he's been so comfortable, and he's been phenomenal for Man City, and that just goes to show how good of a manager Pep Guardiola is.
Yeah, that reminds me of Manchester United when Sir Alex Ferguson left a brilliant squad, and he had won quite a number of trophies before he left, and the same squad didn't deliver when he left. There was some magic down there. Anyway, it's Arsenal diehards for you. Just make it a point, subscribe and ring that notification bell so you do not miss out on anything that we definitely have to bring to you. As we are going to be talking about transfers, who is going where, and definitely who's remaining at the club. Not forgetting who's the club buying. And right about now, we are talking about the one and only Gabriel Jesus. Gabriel Jesus has an injury which will last possibly 3 months. And Gabriel Jesus is a big part of the Arsenal team. He scored a couple of goals that have led Arsenal to the top position. And right about now, Arsenal is left with a young football player as a striker, and that is none other than that's Eddie Nketiah. Yeah. So I personally think possibly Eddie Nketiah is not capable of anyway, he's a good football player, but he's still young. He doesn't have the experience that gentleman has. And another thing, Eddie Nketiah, anyway, he's still young. You can't. There are two football players who are incomparable. Yes. One is an expert, and that expert definitely needs to be. I don't know how I can call it, but there needs somebody to come in his foot to fill the gap. You know what I mean? So what Arsenal are trying to do in this January transfer window to make sure they can close the gap is buy new players. Yeah. And some of the football players that have been linked to Arsenal to possibly replace Gabriel Jesus. Yeah. One of the most talked about is Shakhtar Donetsk football player, Ukrainian international Mykhailo Mudryk. Yeah. But before we go to Mykhailo Mudryk, there is Joao Felix. Yeah. What do you think about Joao Felix getting to? Do you think he can play the role so well as Gabriel Jesus has been playing?
Speaking on Jesus, I think he's played really well for Arsenal, even though he's missed quite a few chances. He's not the best of finishers. However, what doesn't really get talked about as much as just his sheer work rate and how he presses from the front, and he just literally inspires every single player around him to do the same thing. He puts defenders under pressure. His movement in behind's been brilliant this season. You can't just look at the stat sheet and say, look, he scored 5 goals in the Premier League and stuff like that. You can't just look at his numbers. It's more than that. He's been brilliant for Arsenal this season, but I just think Arsenal need another striker, and especially with Juventus going through the turmoil that they're going through now, and their board resigning and a lot of stuff's going on within that club. I would try and pounce and get Vlahovic off them. He's a brilliant striker, strong, great finisher, good in the air. His link-up play may not be as good as Jesus's, but sometimes you just need a big target man to hit that can also, sit down and play football. I just think you need a different look, and at the highest level you need numerous world-class players in every position. Look at Man City. They've got Erling Haaland, and they've got Alvarez, who's been proven how good of a player he is this World Cup with Argentina. I just think Arsenal need another striker in, and if I was them, I would get in another central midfielder in case anything happens, because the drop off with Arsenal, you go from Partey, which has been absolutely brilliant, and then you've got Xhaka, who's been playing further up in the 8th, and he's been brilliant himself this season, but God forbid anything was to happen to any of the two of them, you go down to the likes of El Neni, or you go down to Lokonga. The drop off is huge at the top level. Man City, for example, De Bruyne gets hurt, you got Bernardo Silva, you got Ilkay Gundogan. If anything happens to Foden, you've got Grealish, you've got Mahrez, you've got so many players, world-class players in every position. Exactly. So Arsenal need to just try and recruit, but if the deal is looking too expensive in January, I would think twice about it. But if you really want to push for that title, they need to sign someone in this January window to try and strengthen their squad depth and maybe potentially even get in a starter.
Okay. And also, Youri Tielemans is another one that's been linked at the Leicester City football player. In the summer transfer window, we possibly thought Youri Tielemans was going to cross over from Leicester City, but for some reason, both parties didn't agree about the price and stuff like that. How do you rate Youri Tielemans to Gabriel Jesus?
They're two different players, of course, and one's a forward, one's a central midfielder, but Tielemans is a great player, brilliant player. But the only thing I'd say about Tielemans, he can play a game where you think to yourself, this young man can get into any team in world football, and then there's others where he just lets the game go by him and whatnot. But in this Arsenal team, would he necessarily be a starter? I don't know. But he would be a brilliant player to just have in your squad in case anything did happen, and if he proved himself to be, good enough to start, you play around him and you get him into the team somehow. But with Gabriel Jesus, he's been a brilliant player. There's not much else to say about him. He's been brilliant. He could improve his finishing, but outside of that, his all-round game's been brilliant for the team. Link up, press as well. What you want from your striker, cause havoc. Make the defenders think twice about getting close to him. But I just think Arsenal need to get themselves in another striker and potentially another central midfielder in this window if they can. And if not, definitely in the summer they need to strengthen to try and obviously maintain the success that they've had up until now. Because you can't rest on your laurels at this level. It's perpetual movement, otherwise you get left behind, which is why Arsenal were previously in situations where they struggled, because obviously they had to pay off their stadium and whatnot, and they weren't spending money and letting go of top class players, and that's what led Arsenal to fall off a little bit. But now with Arteta, they've had a great resurgence, and now they're in a position where they can only, look forward, and especially with them having Champions League football next season, if they get into the top four. It's a bit early to even be speaking about that, but they look like they're getting top four, so if they're playing in the Champions League, obviously they're going to be attracting a higher calibre of player. But hopefully we'll see where Arsenal end at the end of the season, and they should just try and go from there.
Okay. Thank you for being part. Thank you for being part of the podcast, and make it a point to subscribe. Do not forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell. Okay, so still in the transfers, there is one more to go. We are talking about, anyway, the Pedro Neto was also linked to Arsenal. We don't know how. What do you think about Pedro Neto?
Pedro Neto is a very good player. But I just think with Arsenal, there's key areas where they have to strengthen. I just think they need to get themselves a guy who can keep the ball a little bit more, keep Arsenal ticking over from a deeper position. And they also need to get a replacement, someone that can cover for Partey if he was to get injured, like someone that can break up play for them and whatnot. But I think Arsenal's key areas is that holding midfielder position as well as a striker. Outside of that, I think Arsenal are pretty much set in the other positions because they've got Saliba at the back, they've got Ben White, they've got Gabriel. Gabriel obviously has his moments, but all round he's been a good defender this season. And then you've got Tierney, even though Tierney's had his injury problems as well. But all round at the back four, I think they'll be okay towards the end of for this season anyways. But I just think that central midfield area as well as that striker, it needs to get covered. And if anything was to happen to Martinelli, you get yourself a left winger. But I wouldn't hurry to get a left winger in because you got Martinelli, a young player that's been brilliant this season, and then they got Saka on the right hand side, which has been absolutely sublime and shown his quality obviously for England in the World Cup. But I just think you don't want to overcomplicate this January window. You want to get one or two players in that can give you that extra boost, and obviously show the fans as well as the players themselves that you're in a bit ambitious club that's trying to get to the next level.
Okay, I understand that. Then closing it all, Shakhtar Donetsk football player. I think he's around 21 years old. Mykhailo Mudryk, roughly 21 years old. He's still very young, isn't he? So he's still very young, but people have quite a lot of expectations of him. Do you think he's going to deliver in case he comes? Because he's the most likely one that is going to be signed.
Yeah, I'll be completely honest with you, I haven't seen much of him. I've seen little glimpses of him here and there, but he seems a good player. But obviously the jump to the Premier League is huge. It takes usually players roughly around a season to get used to the pace and the power of this league, and then the fact that every single team that you play are gonna have a go at you, and they're all every single team are physical, strong, powerful. It takes a little bit of time getting used to, but we'll see when he gets here. There's so many times where we've had world-class players come to the Premier League, and obviously they've not been able to keep up with the pace and power of the league. But it's one of those where you just have to wait and see, really.
Yeah, thank you for being part again. Thank you for being part again, and make it a point to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you do not miss out on whatever we bring to you right here at Arsenal Diehards, as we are dedicated to bringing to you the latest. If you want the latest in these transfers, transfer rumor, done deals, speculations, you can get everything right here. And we've been talking about transfers, who's going where, who's remaining at the club, but mainly we've been talking about those who will definitely be coming to the club, whom we expect possibly that will be coming to the club. With this gentleman's injury, with Gabriel Jesus' injury, it leaves Arsenal in a big gap. So whom is your favorite football player? Whom do you think Arsenal should buy in this January transfer window? You can give us a central midfielder, one defender, and one striker. Whom do you think Arsenal should buy so that they can get the Premier League title?
In terms of a central midfielder, you could potentially look at maybe even someone like a Rabiot. The best one would be, say, go for Jude Bellingham, but obviously that's going to be a little bit difficult with obviously every team near enough in world football after him. But Rabiot would be a good signer for Arsenal, I believe. He's shown again during this tournament how good of a player that he actually is. And he's had his up and downs in his career, especially when he was at PSG and whatnot. But I feel as though that he's starting to come back now, and he's starting to find his feet again. And the thing is, he wouldn't be, he wouldn't break the bank at this point in his career. I think he'd be a good signing, or even looking back at someone like a Tielemans would fit right into that Arsenal team. And then in terms of a striker, I'd look at someone like a Vlahovic from Juve. Honestly, I think he's young, he's strong, he's powerful. Yeah, he wouldn't be fazed by these big, strong centre halves. He's bigger than them, he's stronger than most of them, and he's great in the air, and his finishing is absolutely brilliant. And the way Arsenal have been, the amount of chances that they've created, and Jesus hasn't quite finished. I think if you put Vlahovic in that same position, he's putting them away.
Okay, thank you for being part of the podcast, and please make it a point, subscribe and ring that notification bell. It is the transfer show right here at Arsenal Diehards, and right about now we've got sign outs, and we say thank you and tune in again tomorrow same time.